first we're going to talk about the reloading press, which is probably the most important part of the reloading because you're going to be doing most of the work on the press. Right here, we have a very simple RCBS turret press. Turret press basically meaning that I can change this head right here to different dies, and I can have a bunch of dies loaded at once, so I can go through various stages of that process at any given point in time. This would be for intermediate reloaders when it comes to reloading by volume. It can process and reload rounds quicker than a single stage, which I'll talk about in a minute, but it also allows you to control what's happening more by manually turning the stations and being able to only focus on one cartridge at a time and one round at a time instead of having a lot of stuff going on at once. You can see that each action of the handle will only activate the RAM and not move anything else. It has no other moving parts. This one has a primer assembly that allows you to prime cartridges at the same time. You can probably load anywhere between 200 to 300 rounds an hour on this as long as you already have the cases prepped. And it can probably get most intermediate reloaders by and be just fine. There's lots of people that use turret presses. They're available in various brands. I like RCBS. I have a lot of RCBS stuff, but you can get them in Redding, Lee, all kinds of other brands. Some brands are better than others. Some have better warranties. I just like the RCBS ones. The single stage presses they do not have a rotating head. They're fixed, and you can only work on one die at a time. So every time you change the step in your reloading process, you need to take that die out and put a new die in, which means that you need a way of keeping the settings on your die, which is what these die lock rings are for, which we'll talk about later on. But you need to find a way to keep the settings on your die after you change it and replace it for every time you reload to have relatively consistent loads and to be able to reload ammo relatively quickly. Obviously, you need a way to dispense powder. For a turret press, you can just screw it right into the turret head, and it can be part of your process when you do click adjustments. Normally you would have an independent powder measure set aside from the actual press itself if you have a single stage, or you can get an adapter that goes underneath these dies that will set kind of catty corner to it and set your powder drop in there. But the press is going to be the mainstay of your reloading setup. Your press will pretty much determine what you can and can't do. Turret presses, like I said, are for intermediate volume reloading. They're not very good for accuracy because the play in the turret head will cause a lot of case run out, which is basically a lack of concentricity in the case, and make it so that your bullets are less accurate when they go down range. The single stages are generally more accurate because they stay in one spot, and you actually have some single stage presses that will allow your case holder and the die to move in them to align the case better for precision. So if you're first time reloader learning, you're going to want to start on either a turret or a single stage. If you plan on reloading by volume down the road, turret's probably your better option. If you plan on reloading for precision down the road, a single stage is your better option. As long as you go with a reputable company, it doesn't matter which one you go with. Presses vary wildly in price. For a top-of-the-line precision single-stage press, you could pay $1,000. For a regular single-stage press, you could pay $70. For a top-of-the-line turret press, you could pay $1,200. For something like this, would be about $200 to $300, depending on the parts and bits you get with it, like the primer systems and stuff. So it all depends on what you plan on doing with your reloading, how much you plan on reloading, and how much you want to invest in your beginning reloading kit. The last press we're going to talk about is called a progressive press. This is an example of a progressive press. Now granted, this is a commercial progressive press. This is not the kind of progressive press that your average reloader would have in their house. This is called a Dillon Super 1050. It is a very large, complicated progressive press. This one has more stations than what most people would need, because this is designed to be able to take a case that you got from the range that all you've done is clean and then it goes around, and it has a finished bullet at the end. Every time you crank this lever, it'll pull out a new finished bullet. Cartridge, I should say, my apologies. So it has an automated case feeder to make the rounds come in quicker, the empty cases. Once the empty cases come in, they're going to get fed into the shell plate, and every time you pull this, and you can see it kind of work, that cell plate's going to progress to the next station. And all the reloading steps that we're going to talk about later are done in one stroke of a lever. This is for advanced reloaders. There's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of things happening at once, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and you need to be able to identify what's happening to your ammunition by looking at it before you shoot it. So once we talk about checking your ammo at various stages of the reloading process, you don't have that opportunity with the progressive press. You really have to have it tuned in, know what's going on, because the second you start pulling that lever, it's just belting out ammo. This will load as fast as you pull that handle. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. There's people that take the same exact press, hook it up with an automated robot. They spit out 3,000-4,000 rounds an hour. This thing just whips it out as quick as you can put it out. There's other progressive presses that don't do this kind of volume. They'll only have 4 stations or 5 stations. Some of them have less stations. Progressive presses range in price from $500 to $12,000 for some of the bigger ones. This one's an intermediate one. Many competition reloaders, such as myself, use this type of press because of the volume of ammo that we go through on a weekly basis. This is not something I would recommend for a starting reloader by any means. If you wanted to start with what's a very simple progressive press, then I would recommend the Dillon 550. It is a 4-station progressive press that you manually index instead of indexing at the same time when you pull the handle. It's kind of a hybrid between a turret press and a progressive press. You'll get that extra production per hour that you might be looking for, but it's not going to be as complicated with as many moving parts as this, and you'll actually be able to tell the difference as to what's happening at various different points of your reloading process.